Welcome, everybody, to Hygiene Elevated Conversations and Innovations. We are super excited today to be interviewing Dr. Jen and her husband, Peter, with their products today. And I am just fangirl over here, super excited to get to hear the story behind the products, the inspiration, more of the science behind it. I think there's been a huge paradigm shift and a lot of people kind of questioning some of the products that we've been using in dentistry traditionally. So I am very excited to get to hear this perspective today. So with that being said, Dr. Jen and Peter, I give you the floor. Introduce yourselves. What are your backgrounds? What do you want us to know about you?
You want me to start?
Yes, you're Dr. Jen.
I'm Dr. Jennifer Eisenhuth. I'm an orthodontist from St. Paul, Minnesota. I have, grown up here, went to undergrad in civil engineering at the University of Minnesota, and eventually went to dental school and then a residency beyond that. And I've been a faculty member at the University of Minnesota School of Dentistry for about 5 years. And we'll get into the, behind the scenes of why we created this paste. Why don't I let my husband introduce himself?
Very good. Well, we had a consultant probably 20 years ago in her practice, and I loved how she described me. And I'm going to say that my name's Peter, and I'm Dr. Jen's biggest fan. So there you have it. But yes, we met in undergrad, and it's been a whirlwind from starting her first practice to raising children. My side gig, I'm an airline pilot, but most of my time is really helping my wife out however I can, whether it's with her business or with her toothpaste.
That you guys are a power couple. I love it so much. And actually, Peter, I wanted to be a pilot. That was my first dream job. Here I am, a hygienist, but gosh, you guys are awesome. I love it. So what was the inspiration? How did you decide, hey, I'm an orthodontist, I'm going to start a toothpaste line? And how did you come into the materials that you chose to use?
Right. It started with a little bit of, I wouldn't call it a tragedy, but a serious illness on the end of my daughter. We have 3 children. Our daughter is the oldest. And she ended up getting C. diff after having a root canal, of all things, a root canal. It was during finals. And so it was difficult for her to get, back and forth to the endodontist. And essentially she was just overprescribed, penicillin. And so she ended up, getting C. diff, which it turned out to be a pretty serious, bit of it. And she was admitted into the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota. She was one of the youngest patients they'd ever had with C. diff. And she was there for almost a week. And during that time, the doctors explained to her and to us that her gut was basically, demolished, and she had to start over. So almost like a baby, she had to be careful what she ate. She had to be careful of the products that she used because her gut had to regrow. And all of the, all the good bacteria had to come back because it was blown out. And so I thought, honestly, the easy part would be the toothpaste. It's like, okay, no problem. We will find a natural toothpaste that has, clean, healthy ingredients, and it'll remineralize your teeth, and no problem. And so we, went home, went to Amazon, ordered natural toothpaste after natural toothpaste after natural toothpaste, and all these boxes would come. And I mean, I think we still have them in our basement. And they mostly had awful stuff in them, petroleum products, sodium lauryl sulfate, stuff that you wouldn't want a baby to have. You wouldn't want to have, somebody who just had C. diff to have. Really, you wouldn't want yourself to have. And so then we kind of narrowed it down to just a few pastes that didn't have that stuff in it, but they tasted awful, like medicine. And who wants to use this? Mm-hmm. So that didn't work either. And then on top of it all, none of them remineralized. So none of them remineralized. And as a dentist, I was truly kind of shocked, disappointed that there's this whole big natural, toothpaste lines and oral care products that don't do what we want toothpaste to do in the first place. And so that's when I think I just said to Peter, we need to make a better natural toothpaste. We need to make one with clean ingredients that actually tastes great so people want to use it, and then also remineralize their teeth. And so really that's kind of the background of how Dr. Jen ended up being born. Is that accurate?
That's accurate.
I've definitely kind of been on the receiving end of a lot of natural products that are, hey, nanohydroxyapatite, we remineralize, we have the clean ingredients. And I think there's some out there that are good, until I was at RDH under one roof and I talked to Peter actually, and he was like, well, you have to have 10%. And I was like, says who? So I didn't know that. There's so much out there. Somebody kind of described the nanohydroxyapatite world as the Wild West of toothpaste right now, because there's so little known about it. So what was your process? How did you find that out? What's the difference between hydroxyapatite, nanohydroxyapatite, all those things? What is that science?
That's such a great question. When I decided to jump forward with this project, I looked into the science, and tried to find out, is there another option beyond fluoride to remineralize teeth? And there is, nanohydroxyapatite. And there's a lot of science behind nanohydroxyapatite. I mean, it was really founded, 40 years ago, I think, and it's been used in a toothpaste from Japan ever since. And it's just starting to come, into the United States. But so many of these toothpaste companies, they're owned by venture capital groups or, and they haven't done the science behind, they haven't read the science behind it. And so you can't just throw a little bit in there and think it's going to be an effective remineralizing agent. And so to be as effective as fluoride, it needs to be at 10%, and it needs to be in the nanohydroxyapatite form. And so there's several toothpastes out there that use hydroxyapatite, which is 1,000 times too large, so it's not going to work. Or they just sprinkle it in. So maybe there's 1, 2, 3% in there, but all of the studies, all the clinical studies show it needs to be 10% to be as effective, as strong as fluoride in protecting our teeth. And so we looked at the science first and then developed a toothpaste afterward. And I hired a retired chemist from Colgate. He's a wonderful guy, and it was really hard to find him. But we found him and told him, this was right around, it was 2020, it was right around COVID. And he just happened to be home, he's retired. But anyway, told him what I wanted, and he's like, that's genius. He was so excited. And so he helped create, this toothpaste with the clean ingredients, with the correct remineralizing agent, to strengthen enamel and taste great.
It does. Sort of a segue. My husband is incredibly picky. And as a hygienist, we get all sorts of samples in, and I use him as a guinea pig all the time. And so we've gone through water flossers, toothpaste, toothbrushes. I can genuinely say he loves your toothpaste, and that makes me very happy. We have found something that we can both love.
So nice.
So, yes, I love it, but he loves it. So, that's like your kids love it. It's a miracle. So when my husband loves it, yes.
My kids are 10 and 7, and they actually, like, when the bottle was empty, like, hey, Mom, can we get this one again? Like, they are your guys' fans too.
Fantastic.
Yes.
And the nice thing with nanohydroxyapatite is, as well, is, with the younger kids, if they use fluoride, you have to worry about, what size you're putting on their toothbrush, and you have to make sure they're spitting it out, and try not to swallow too much of that. With nanohydroxyapatite, you don't need to worry about it. We're not saying eat it, but if they swallow some, it's okay. You really don't need to worry about it, even in the very, very young. It's biocompatible. It's not going to hurt them.
So do you consider yourself to be more on the holistic side of dentistry? Is that kind of your worldview? Or are you just, hey, I just wanted something clean because of my daughter? Where did that kind of come into things?
Our family's always been kind of the organic granola type of family. And I just never pushed myself into choosing natural toothpaste, because honestly, in dental school, fluoride. And so, when you looked at the natural paste, they didn't have fluoride. And so I just always used the fluoride paste. And when, my daughter had to move to something that wasn't, full of, petroleum products or sodium lauryl sulfate, that's when I really opened my eyes and said, all right, I really did think I'd be able to just find one. Like, this should be no problem. But I couldn't. So.
Wow. I appreciate that you guys have put in the work and the research and the investment to give an alternative, because so I just recently moved to Utah, and by 3 years, but I have faced a lot of anti-fluoride patients here in Utah. And it's either totally fine with fluoride, or like I have a filter on my house to make sure none of that comes in. So like, you're not going to talk them. It's not about the $20 for them. But these people, and I work in an ortho office as well, you need fluoride. You need some remineralization. And for so long, there's just not been something for these people that have that desire to no fluoride. So I actually had new patients that came in my schedule yesterday. Lots of decay and not the best hygiene. And mom was saying that they've just recently got away from fluoride within the last 2 years, I would say. And so I was like, okay, what are you using at home? Let's talk. If you don't want fluoride, let's talk remineralization. We've got to have something in there. And she was saying that they've started using a different type of toothpaste. I'm not going to throw anybody else under the bus. And I was like, can I make a suggestion? And I pulled up your stuff on Amazon on my computer, and she goes, oh, we have tried that, and my kids loved it. And I was like, yes, go back to it. Go back to it. So they were the first ones, though, that I've encountered that have been using your product. There's a lot of people that are into like tooth powders and then bentonite clay stuff. And I'm like, that's great for cleaning, but that's not going to remineralize anything. No. So I think you guys are so ahead of the curve, and I'm on board with it. I'm totally on board with it. So.
Oh, well, thank you. That's a great story.
Yeah, I know. It was very timed perfectly for this week.
I see it with my own patients too, where some families are just anti-fluoride, and they come in, and the kids, they're young and they're getting decay, and really I feel like as dental professionals we haven't seen decay like that for a while. Mm-hmm. and it's because they're not exposing themselves to something that's going to remineralize. And so in my own office, I'm handing this stuff out like candy, and I'm taking photos. And when they come back and, for their next appointment, I'm taking new photos, and I'm showing them, okay, do you see, I'm not saying you have to use my toothpaste, so please use one that's going to remineralize your teeth.
Yeah.
It's important.
Yeah. One size does not fit all for everybody, but here in Utah, and Joffrey can attest to this, dirty soda is insane in Utah. There is like swig, guzzle, fizz, fuse, and it's like soda flavored with every type of sugary syrup you can imagine. And that is like a staple here in Utah. It is a cult following. Like, you can't be a Utahn and not have like a swig mug. It's crazy.
Everywhere. They are everywhere. And it's like you get your soda paired with a sugar cookie. Like,
yes.
It's like a thing. And they are so popular.
It's really bizarre.
it's just acid on their teeth. It's just, oh.
What's interesting is our daughter, who has C. diff, she's actually a third-year dental student following after mom's footsteps, but she had a bunch of her classmates over, and I didn't know this because I pulled out carbonated water. I had carbonated water, and they're like, Mr. Eisenhuth, do you know the pH on your carbonated water? I said, no. And they were talking about this in the dental schools. They're seeing higher incidence of caries because of a movement, what people think are a shift towards healthier beverages, in particular carbonated beverages. They're actually seeing higher caries at the University of Minnesota Dental School. It's something they're talking about. And I had no idea, and I'm not going to mention any brands, but I did Google several of the brands of more popular carbonated beverages, and the pHs are anywhere from like a 2.7 to a 3.5. So a lot of, and this is good information for, I think, consumers in general, is you can be consuming something you think is healthy, whether it's fruit, whether it's carbonated water, coffee. Maybe some people like the polyphenols in coffee. These are all ingredients that are acidic, and when we have acidity or low pH, what happens to our enamel is we lose minerals, in particular phosphate and calcium. And the American diet, we end up with a phosphate and calcium deficit at the end of the day. And if it's left prolonged, the next stage is caries. And so, as Jennifer was saying, her goal is to make sure her patients have some way to reboot the phosphate and calcium from our average American diet.
It is atrocious. One of my favorite tools, and kind of slightly off subject, there's a company here in Utah that does a nanoparticle silver mouthwash. And on their website, I don't know if you're familiar with Elementa Silver. I love their website. I pretty much always have their website up because they have a pH scale of where their product is, where soda is, and where other dental products are. And I keep that up so much because people aren't aware of the things that they drink or consume are so acidic and demineralize. And I have that conversation multiple times a day. I had one today because of a Bing drinker, which is a brand of energy drinks. And so I was like, well, let's look up what the pH is. Yeah. And it was really good because, I didn't know what it was. I'm sure it was acidic, but I wouldn't have known off the top of my head. So it was a good conversation. So
yeah, and I think that's the important piece too with natural toothpaste, is you do want to know how abrasive they are and what their pH is, and just make sure that they are actually helping rather than contributing.
Yes.
I was gonna say, I know Jennifer talked about nanohydroxyapatite a little bit, but for your listeners, if you want, we can explain a little bit the differences between fluoride, how fluoride is used to remineralize enamel versus nanohydroxyapatite, because the biophysics is quite a bit different. And for that reason, there are benefits that nanohydroxyapatite has over certain subgroups of patients, if that's something you'd like to hear about as well.
Yeah, that was definitely part of my question. Yes.
Awesome. All right. So what did I jump in there? Because I work pretty closely with our chemist, and I go to these holistic dental conferences, and I get hit up these questions I get from the dentist. They're pretty good at drilling us. Our son, who isn't here on the podcast, he's in dental school in Salt Lake at Roseman. He did his thesis on nanohydroxyapatite. So he was the guy behind the research. But just a little bit back up, just kind of a review for your listeners, how fluoride works. Number one is when you brush with fluoride or you give your patients a fluoride treatment, first thing it does is it creates fluoroapatite, which basically helps the enamel become more resilient to pH, which is good. The thing that fluoride doesn't have, though, is it doesn't contain phosphate and calcium. If we look at the enamel on the teeth, 97% of the composition of the enamel is hydroxyapatite, primarily phosphate and calcium. And so, as we mentioned, as our patients and as we eat our American diet throughout the day, we lose phosphate and calcium. What fluoride does, though, it does two things. Number one, it creates fluoroapatite, so it helps make the enamel more resilient to acid, but it also helps promote the transfer of phosphate and calcium from our saliva flow. Saliva, healthy saliva flow is enriched with phosphate and calcium. And so for enamel to be remineralized using fluoride, we have to have saliva, healthy saliva with phosphate and calcium. So the difference, though, between fluoride and nanohydroxyapatite is nanohydroxyapatite doesn't rely on healthy saliva flow. If we break down hydroxyapatite or nanohydroxyapatite, the chemical composition of it, it's calcium, phosphate, hydrogen, and oxygen. And so how it works is if the crystals are small enough, a nanoparticle, which is generally less than 100 nanometers, when we brush with a high concentration of 10% of it, those crystals will enter into the surface pores, get into the dented tubules, they chemically bond, and they give the enamel a mineral uptake of phosphate and calcium. And where we've seen this, and we hear about this throughout the country, where it has a more significant benefit is with patients with xerostomia. There's over 30.
That was going to be my question.
Yeah, there's over 35 million Americans on statins. 80% of those have side effects of xerostomia. We're seeing with patients going through chemo, diabetics, CPAPs, even young children that are breathing. And so we're hearing testimonials, and Jennifer has seen it with her patients as well, that were given even a high prescription level of fluoride toothpaste, and they've switched to a nanohydroxyapatite crystal. And we're seeing less caries, higher levels of remineralizing. But I think for your listeners, once again, the biophysics are really different. They're both clinically proven to be effective, though, at remineralizing enamel. The caveat, though, is that fluoride does need healthy saliva flow for the remineralizing portion to get phosphate and calcium back into the enamel.
That was wonderful. That was a wonderful, succinct, but super perfectly informative. So, thank you.
I'm going to tell you, I did not know that, and maybe I missed that day in dental school. But when we learned all of those things, I did not realize that people who with xerostomia, I mean, I always thought high prescription fluoride for them, and I did not realize that actually, if they don't have saliva, you can give them all the fluoride you want; it's not going to work. And so that was a new thing for me. And what are we holding up here? Super paste.
So it's a good segue to talk about the super paste, if we can, a little bit.
Yes.
There are patients that are really struggling with weak enamel, and they might not even have xerostomia. And Jennifer, the engineer in her, loves to create new things. So I'll let you talk about that. What she played around with it, but there are clinical studies tied in. Go ahead.
Yeah, and it's super paste. So we have nanohydroxyapatite, mint, and strawberry, right? So one for the adults, one strawberry is, for the kids, or for the adults who don't like mint. But then we also created what we call super paste, and super paste has both fluoride and nanohydroxyapatite. So it's kind of a double dosage of remineralizing. And clinical studies show that, as I said before, nanohydroxyapatite 10% is just as effective as fluoride at protecting teeth. But when you combine them, even better. And so this is for people who are prone to decay, who have high, sensitivity. It's I can't use any name brands, but great for sensitivity. And, I have to say my father, who has been on one of those, big box sensitivity toothpaste his whole life, I said, I want you to try this, Dad. I want you to try this. And he's like, oh, no. I've got my toothpaste. I can't use anything else. And I finally convinced him to try it. And now he's a believer. So it's super effective.
Yeah, if I can just add to what Jennifer is talking about, there are a lot of patients out there that are already struggling with health issues, and there are concerns with fluoride. We don't bash fluoride. Jennifer has a fluoride product. However, we want to be respectful to patients' concerns. At the end of the day, and Amanda, you said it, if a patient comes in and they don't want fluoride, we can't convince them to use fluoride. What we can do is we can educate them about a replacement for fluoride, 10% nanohydroxyapatite. Now, for those patients that are coming in that are on depression medication, statins, diabetics, and they're really struggling with caries, especially if they have health issues, fluoride may be something that is a concern of theirs. And what what the common course is within dentistry is with these patients that have high caries, especially if they have xerostomia, is to throw high prescription fluoride toothpaste at them. So Jennifer's solution is let's use over-the-counter levels of fluoride with 10% nanohydroxyapatite. It gives double the remineralizing, but we're attacking it from two angles. We got the fluoroapatite, and then we have the nanohydroxyapatite. So we're hearing testimonials throughout the country where people have switched from high prescription to the super paste, and they have less caries. The other thing that we've noticed is healthier oral tissue. The big box brands generally use propylene glycol, it's PEG, that's antifreeze, sodium lauryl sulfate, and other ingredients that can cause oral inflammation. So we're hearing patients share just getting off of some of these toxic ingredients, seeing less inflammation. But what Jennifer was referring to was sensitivity management. And ancillary, there's several ancillary benefits to nanohydroxyapatite. Number one is remineralizing. The second is managing hypersensitivity. We sent you a link for the hypersensitivity study. It's an in vitro study, and it's clinically proven to manage sensitivity. But if you want to look at your patients that have chronic pain because of sensitivity, we understand we need to get them out of chronic pain. Otherwise, they can't eat. Eating is one of the joys of life. We get dopamine from it. And so what we want to do is we want to help these patients relieve their sensitivity so they can live a normal life, eat a normal diet. Well, what most brands use to manage sensitivity is potassium nitrate. Back to your chemistry days, potassium nitrate is the same ingredient used to make explosives, rocket fuel, fertilizer. And Gabe was explaining this to me, our dental student. He was saying, Dad, potassium nitrate is like aspirin. It's a pain blocker. What it does is when you're brushing with a toothpaste with potassium nitrate, and generally toothpaste brands that are using this to manage sensitivity have to put in higher concentrations, usually around 5%. What they're doing is the potassium nitrate gets into the surface pores, into the dentin tubules, and it goes into the nerve of the tooth, and it creates a pain block from the nerve of the tooth to the brain. So it's ultimately addressing the symptoms, which is a pain. So what nanohydroxyapatite does, and it is clinically proven to manage hypersensitivity, is instead of addressing the symptoms, it goes in and addresses the underlying problems. Most people who have sensitivity, it's either gum recession, weak enamel. Nanohydroxyapatite will go in and it will coat exposed dentin. It will go in and coat weak enamel. And so it's actually providing a protective shield. And overall, we hear it from either from Jennifer's father to patients throughout the country when they switched from a potassium nitrate toothpaste to manage hypersensitivity to a toothpaste with 10% nanohydroxyapatite. They generally have less sensitivity, but it's the way it's managing the hypersensitivity is different. It's helping rebuild some of the enamel or coating the exposed dentin versus using potassium nitrate as a pain blocker.
Yeah, I love that. Whenever I have a patient that comes in with sensitivity and they tell me what big box brand that they've been using, I'll say, well, this is just numbing the pain, essentially. It's not fixing the problem. Right. So I feel like your product is specifically addressing the problem. And I think that's what I love. I'm not a fan of Band-Aids. I want a solution to the problem. Yeah. So
do you think we're gonna see a nanohydroxyapatite varnish like we do with a fluoride?
We get asked that all the time, and I think it is a brilliant idea.
We're actually we're in development of it, and now the word's out. Whoever's listening,
you heard it here first.
Yes, we hope to have one to market. We won't be the only one, but we hope that, and that's just it from this podcast here. We don't expect your consumers to use just Dr. Jen's. We hope they do, but for those people that are making toothpaste with nanohydroxyapatite, hopefully they'll switch their concentrations and realize, the word's out now, guys. You cannot bank on the fact that dentists and hygienists are no longer reading the clinical studies. They are. Mm-hmm. You want, and I honestly believe there isn't a patient or a dentist or a hygienist out there when they're recommending a remineralizing product, they want these patients to have an equivalent level of protection as fluoride. But if they didn't have this information prior to this podcast, how could you recommend a brand that had efficacy behind it? One of the premier brands that we were talking about earlier was called AppGuard. And if you want to throw other brands out there that are really good, AppGuard is the pioneer toothpaste. They're the ones who—
That's the Japanese one.
Yeah, they bought the patent. They bought the patent from NASA in 1980. They spent 40 years refining their nanohydroxyapatite, their toothpaste. And most of the clinical studies you read it's using AppGuard's toothpaste. But the only difference really between Jennifer's toothpaste and AppGuard's, because AppGuard does their Primo, they use 10%. It's a really good product. So if your listeners are thinking, well, I want to do some research, I want to try some other brands, AppGuard does use 10%. They're the ones that really are the pioneers. Now, they're not a clean ingredient toothpaste, but back to other applications to it. Yes, that's varnish is one. There's many other applications. Oral surgeons are coating implants now with nanohydroxyapatite. Orthopedic surgeons are coating the synthetic joints, or what do you call the titanium joints, with hydroxyapatite. Nanohydroxyapatite is used in cancer detection. We're seeing a wide range use of nanohydroxyapatite right now.
Is it because of the biocompatibility?
Yeah, it's biocompatible. And so it's very friendly to your body, and it's a good product.
How can one invest in your company? Are you guys public yet?
Yeah, it's just us.
Give me a call if you're interested.
I'll email you, Peter.
Here's the thing: we're not alone. Nanohydroxyapatite's out. If people are talking about it, we can really thank AppGuard for this. Like I said, they bought the patent. They invested millions of dollars of research refining it. The sad part is though, most brands that are doing this are ran by investment bankers and venture capitalists. Their number one goal is to make profits for their investors. And that was part of the frustration when Jennifer was doing the search. And so her name's on this toothpaste. Her primary goal is to help patients fight caries. And I don't think she's not the only brand. As I said, AppGuard is another one that they do a great job with their Primo that has 10%.
This is exciting. This is honestly very exciting. So I'm very excited for you guys. Was there any point in time where you kind of received criticism for being the pioneers in this?
Oh my gosh. You can't win. Go ahead.
Every day, every day, really, I know that this product is backed in science, and because I did the science, we did the science first, and they aren't our studies. They are studies that have been done at universities, for the last decade or 15 years, and so that's what we use to make the product. But what can I say?
Here's the challenge with this. I think there's really two camps, Amanda, and you kind of touched on this a little bit. We have, the majority of dental schools are saying only fluoride, only fluoride. Good news is there are more and more dental schools, though, that are starting to discuss hydroxyapatite, the benefits of hydroxyapatite. The flip side is, do you want me to get that alarm? Sorry, get interrupted. You'll have to edit that out.
Excuse me. Alarm.
Excuse me.
He's gonna go get the alarm.
You're good. We're just lucky my dogs haven't barked at something yet, so that's normal.
We have two big dogs, and I was really thinking, if UPS or somebody comes up here,
Yeah.
we're going to have to pause it all out, because I don't know, they bark, and they're just like this. It's so loud, you would not believe it.
All right, I'll start over with that answer. Okay, so you asked a question of, does she receive any backlash or criticism? Yes. There are two camps. We have this holistic group of dentists we work with, and they're really embracing her product because they're not fans of fluoride. And so we've had, great partnerships with offices. However, we do have a fluoride product, which is the super paste. And so we get a little backlash from them. It's like, well, why are you guys making a fluoride toothpaste? It's because we believe there's a way to help people, especially that are on high prescription, to take them down a little bit. The flip side is, especially like with some of the Facebook ads that we ran, we have dentists that they're not familiar with nanohydroxyapatite, and just out of the gate they criticize our product and say, well, you know, that's BS. That doesn't work. There's no science behind it. And it's kind of funny because whenever our brand gets attacked, we'll reach out. We had one doctor, I think he responded. I called the office the next day. I sent an email and I said, hey, look, you know, you said that there's no science behind it. Please have the
Let us send it to you.
Please call me. We can send them samples. We'll send them third-party non-funded clinical studies. But it's really interesting though, because like I said, there are very strong opinions against fluoride, and there's very strong opinions for fluoride from both sides. We really do.
I wasn't expecting you to get flack from the holistic side. It makes sense thinking about it, but I wasn't expecting that answer. That's so interesting.
I mean, we really did just use the science, you know, to create it. And there are studies that show when you combine the two, that's good too. It's even better. So
yeah. I work with a very new grad. He graduated this last May and from University of Utah, and I love him to death. And he is very much a fluoride. He doesn't question me. He gives me a lot of free reign. So I love him. But the conversation somehow came up of, well, how do you handle people that don't want fluoride? And I say, well, it just depends on where they're at. You know, if I see them walking in with a giant swig mug, horrible hygiene, yeah, I'm probably not going to have the conversation of, okay, what is your plan to like detox your life? Like, that's not the approach I'm going to say. We're going to talk about, no, you need some fluoride. You're not on that path. But if it's a family that comes in and they say, this is where we're at, this is what we're doing, these are the steps that we're taking to get fluoride out of our lives. We have a good diet. You know, they don't have the soda and all those fun things. Yeah, I'm going to respect that. And let's talk. Let's go remineralization and products like Dr. Jen's for sure. I'm going to recommend. Otherwise, yeah, when those kids come in, braces full of plaque,
yeah,
I'm going to paste that varnish all over them like crazy. So yeah, so it's case by case. Like, you know, I love that you have and I appreciate the story because I was kind of curious. She's doing both. She's on both sides of it. Like, this is interesting. So you reach both.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because when I have this discussion with holistic dentists, what I explain to them is that there's a lot of dentists out there that are using high prescription fluoride toothpaste, and this is a step. It's a step for dentists that have been taught to use a formulation, and let's be honest, most of these high prescription formulations were formulated 30 years ago, using science from 30 years ago. Dr. Jen's toothpaste was formulated 3 years ago, and so we're using very modern science. If we can get dentists, though, to at least be open-minded to try nanohydroxyapatite, even though they don't want to give up on fluoride, it's a step in the right direction. You know, the flip side is that for holistic doctors that really embrace nanohydroxyapatite, hopefully they'll see our brand as a brand that, at the end of the day, we understand that not all patients are the same, and not all dentists are the same. And our goal really is to help advance oral care, preventative oral care for patients using clean, non-toxic ingredients.
I love that so much. Speaking of products, we slightly asked about a varnish, but is there a plan to expand your line of products?
We get a lot of questions on flavors. We have a mouthwash that we've been working on for a while. We originally tried a prebiotic one, but what we discovered is that the nanohydroxyapatite is appearing to be a bigger demand. We get a lot of patients that want nanohydroxyapatite, so we're going to have a mouth rinse with nanohydroxyapatite coming out soon.
Oh, interesting. I'm all intrigued.
And then of course, we have our floss.
Yes.
I'm going to tell you, I'm kind of obsessed with the floss. Yeah. Oh, you've got the floss.
I've got the floss. This is my second one. I'm almost out.
You know, the floss piece, for me it's kind of another one of my passion projects, because when we floss our teeth, you go through these tight contacts and the floss, kind of shreds a little bit, and you go around your mouth. And most floss, nearly all floss, is made with plastic. And so when we are shredding our floss through our contacts, we are releasing microplastics in our mouth and we're swallowing them. And I have a problem with that. I just don't want, I don't want kids, and I don't want my kids, I don't want my family to be doing that. And so did more research into floss, learned everything you want to know about floss and then some. And really I thought, we'll do bamboo. And then I found out that bamboo floss has plastic in it. And so
really,
most do. They have to use a polymer.
Yeah.
And so if there is a pure one out there, that's great. But from what research we did with our floss manufacturers, majority of them, if not all the ones we met with, used a polymer within the bamboo.
Some plastic just to hold it together.
So hopefully there is a pure bamboo without polymer, but we weren't unable to find one.
We couldn't find it. So then we went to silk. So that's what we have. We have Italian silk floss, and it is essentially soaked in nanohydroxyapatite. And so when you go through your contacts, you're putting nanohydroxyapatite into your contacts. And when this floss shreds, it's just biocompatible. Silk does not hurt your body.
I failed to realize that there was nanohydroxyapatite in the floss until you just said that now, and I see it on the back.
Yes.
I didn't read that.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing Jennifer was alluding to was endocrine disruptors. Our daughter, who's in school, one of the things in her biophysics class they said is that the fish don't even know what sex they are because of all the microplastics in the fresh water. The endocrine disruptors affects your hormones. Well, microplastics are part of that. And so once you get microplastics in your body, they get into the bloodstream, they circulate through your organs, through your brain, and they collect in the lungs. But there are many, as everybody knows, microplastics shouldn't be in our body. But what most people don't know is, as Jennifer mentioned, if we're flossing, and hopefully we are, to get bacteria out between our teeth, we need good, perio health. If we are flossing with a plastic floss, we are ingesting microplastics every time because floss does break down. And Jennifer's solution for that is silk. And she said silk is it's biocompatible. And not that you should eat the floss. Silk is good for your hair and for your nails. Floss away. It's biodegradable as well. So
I was just going to say, I remember the first time that I had ever heard the term microplastics, I thought, what crap is this?
Yes.
And then I started to hear endocrine disruptors more and more and more, and just different things about it. And then I never even thought about the floss, because I used to be a huge fan of a very popular floss that was made of recycled water bottles. And I thought, how cool is that? And then the whole idea of, oh, wow, how much more concentrated could we make plastics and microplastics than putting it in floss? And it's just been a whole thing of like, oh my gosh, everything is an endocrine disruptor that we are doing. And even so in dentistry, like what in the heck are we doing? So you guys are so ahead of the curve. And I personally feel amazing being able to have a product that I feel very good about, talking to my patients that are on the same page as me. Again, not everybody cares about microplastics in their bloodstream, but for those patients, I can say, this is what I know. I've seen the people now in person. Peter, we met Dr. Jen now, seeing the people behind it and not just some, big company that's out to make some money with a really fancy marketing scheme. So I love that so much. My personal passion is small business, and that's what you guys are. I love it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That's so kind.
Well, I had a friend of mine say, like, Joffrey, I use this toothpaste in the morning, and then I use this toothpaste at night. I like using different things, and I'm like, well, those toothpastes actually have the exact same ingredients. So what if let me get you some toothpaste? And I got my friend them toothpaste, one with the nanohydroxyapatite and then another one with fluoride. I was like, oh, go ahead and alternate these. These are the products the ingredients you should be having. I absolutely love, Jen, that you have a toothpaste that has both. Like that super paste you have, that's my attention. I love it.
I personally, this is the one I use too. I like super paste. I use them all, I guess, but you know, I think it's just a great product.
It's probably the most popular for offices that use fluoride, not the holistic side. It's our most popular toothpaste used by dentists and hygienists because they get the science behind it, and they want to do everything they can to keep their enamel healthy. And we didn't even get into really the rest of the formulation of the toothpaste because the chemist did for us. He said, look, in addition to having remineralizing, we need to make sure it's pH balancing, which Amanda talked about. It should have a low RDA value. Ours does, it's 44. But he also talked about the benefits of xylitol. Xylitol is great for curbing certain bacteria tied into gingivitis, streptococcus, and then even for managing halitosis. Most big box brands will use flavor. It's usually
artificial flavor.
It's petroleum based. Well, if we have this bad bacteria in our mouth and it works all night, we know the next morning we have this wonderful morning breath. Well, Dr. Jen has she uses real peppermint oil, which will help curb the certain bacteria in your mouth. It will help kill fungus that grows in the crevices of the tongue. But she also added some superfood extracts, papaya and black cherry, for two reasons. The flavor, as she said, she went through 50 different flavor iterations.
Okay, that was fun. I'm going to tell you that. Choosing all the different flavors. But I really wanted something that was antioxidant. It's just good for you. And so papaya, black cherry, mint, those are all really good for us, and they're essential oils. They're not artificial. And I think that's what really helps with the ginger piece of it. And I see it in my own patients where they're coming in, you know, bright red, you know, swollen tissue, and they brush with this. And I think those essential oils are really, really helpful at calming that down. And so of course tasting good.
Yeah, and well, there is actually a clinical study in the link on the peppermint oil on how it's effective at managing gingivitis or fighting certain bacteria tied into that. But where I was going with this is her toothpaste, she put a lot of work into it. It took her 2 years, and it's all encompassing. And so we hit many check marks, everything from remineralizing to flavor to promoting a healthy oral microbiome as well. It's in whether it's her super paste or her fluoride-free Cool Mint, it's the exact base toothpaste. One has nanohydroxy, 10% nano, one has 10% nanohydroxyapatite with fluoride. But as far as the pH, the RDA, the xylitol, the essential oils, they're all the same.
I love it. Whatever you do, whatever is next, I love it. I think I have the cherry one at work, and that's my after lunch little cherry bit. So thank you for the cherry. So.
Of course.
Dr. Jen, I am just in love with your passion for the product. Like, I love the passion behind it. I love seeing it. You guys light up talking about it. That's definitely like the product I want to buy and consume and use and talk about with other people, is when you see where it came from, and just your guys' excitement about it just warms my whole soul over here. I love it.
Well, thank you. It's definitely a passion project. It's not a profit-making thing for us at all.
No, it's kind of funny. I'm going to jump in on that one. When after she formulated her toothpaste, there's a number of companies that will take your formula, and they got the big machines. They mix the ingredients together, and they fill your tubes. But we went around and we were getting bids. It's like, okay, what will it cost to fill our tubes? And several of them, when they looked at her formulation, they asked her the same question. They said, why are you putting in 10% nanohydroxyapatite?
Why?
You're not going to make any
so
profit.
Expensive.
It's too expensive.
Yeah.
All the other brands we're working with are either putting in 1 to 2%, or they're using cheaper hydroxyapatite crystals, as Jennifer mentioned, at 1,000 times too large. But it was really interesting. But at the end of the day, you know, this was not about, hey, how much money can we make? We had a problem to solve, and it was mainly for our daughter. And the interesting thing is, Amanda and Joffrey, is that when we started selling the toothpaste, it was mainly to her patients, our friends, and we did it online. And it was around January of this year that we started getting calls from dental offices throughout the country. And they were hygienists and dentists calling us saying, look, we really love this toothpaste. Can we buy it wholesale? And we hadn't even thought, well, gosh, can we do this wholesale? And so it wasn't until March that we said, all right, let's start offering this wholesale. But this is really a passion project for us. We wish it made us lots of money, and it costs money to put 10% nanohydroxy. It's not a very, maybe someday we'll be able to help pay the lights, but at the end of the day, it's expensive. It's expensive to make a 10% concentration of nanohydroxyapatite toothpaste, but we sleep at night knowing that we are putting a toothpaste out there that has real efficacy behind it to help patients fight caries. And that's really our number one goal is to help families.
I think you guys have definitely struck a nerve with consumers out there that are kind of seeking this alternative toothpaste, because I'm glad you mentioned it was expensive. I looked it up on Amazon and I was like, oh, that is a little expensive. But, and I'm even more impressed kind of with that patient that I had the other day that took a gamble, maybe didn't know as much as she did, and bought a $20 tube of toothpaste for her kids. Like, that kind of shows some dedication and passion for those clean ingredients. And so I think once you place that value on, I want the remineralization, I want good products, and you know what? Let's do it. It's worth it. And it's still a whole lot cheaper than fillings.
Yeah, and if you look at the cost of it, for the price of one Caribou a month, you're getting a month's supply. Our typical tube is it's 4 ounces. I actually, believe it or not, I squeezed out a pea size, and I came out to like 180 peas or 190 pea size. So we did the math. It comes out to about 20 cents a day, or what is it, like $6.80 a month per person to use it. So if you look at it that way, it really is a healthy investment for your body and your enamel.
Who's more analytical, you or Peter?
I think she is.
Really?
He's the orthodontist and the engineer.
I don't know. Just based on this conversation, I feel like
I'm crazy analytical. At the very beginning, looking at those studies and saying, okay, this is what we need to have in it. He's much more vocally analytical.
Yeah.
Okay.
You can tell.
Yes. I'm also the silent analytical. I'm like, okay, you can tell me and I will internalize everything and we'll talk about it.
Yeah.
So, well, Peter, I would agree with the consultant that you had 20 years ago. I think you are definitely the biggest cheerleader and the best spokesperson that your wife could have. So,
I agree with that. And Peter, I wanted to tell you, my son Cooper, he's 6 years old, almost 7. A few months ago, we were driving in the car to school, and he said, "Mom, when I grow up, I think I want to be a pilot." And I said, "Oh, well, that's a great idea. You should do that." And I said, "Well, what gives you that idea?" And he tells me, "Mom, I really like pretty views."
Oh,
I remember you told me that. I forgot you told me that story.
He's
pretty smart on it.
Smart kid. It's the best office view in the world, and the scenery is constantly changing. Very bright kid.
Yes.
I would agree. He's a bright kid. Her kids are wonderful. They're very wonderful. Well, Joffrey, do you want to close this out with the final questions?
Yes. Okay. So either one of you guys can answer this. What piece of advice would you go back and give yourself as a new graduate?
as a new dental graduate?
Yeah.
These are our signature questions that we ask everybody.
Questions. As a new dental graduate, wow. I would, boy, that's a tough one. I would probably remind them that even though they might not feel it, they have a lot of knowledge in their head from all the dental education that they received, and just relax. You know, when we first start seeing patients, we're pretty tight and worried and concerned, and they ask a question and we're like, ooh. But the thing is we know the answer. It's in learned. And so just relax when you see your first patients. You know it, you've got it.
I was gonna say, the other thing I could say, just watching Jennifer, is not to be so hard on yourselves and not have negative self-talk. You could be the greatest dentist in the world or the greatest hygienist in the world, but you're not going to keep everybody happy all the time. There's some patients that are just, you know, they're difficult or whatever. It's just, things just don't, where you have a bad day or whatever it is, but not to be hard on yourself. It's okay to have some patients that are sometimes not happy. If you gave it your best, that's all you can do.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was just going to piggyback off of that, Dr. Jen, of you have the brain knowledge. Sometimes you don't know how to apply it to the working knowledge, and it just takes time and practice to get that head knowledge into the working knowledge. So
absolutely. But it comes.
It does.
Just let it flow.
Well, that actually reminds me, Amanda shared a story with me where she was working with her new graduate doctor, and he had said to her, like, I can't remember exactly how it went. Amanda, you can correct me if I say this wrong, but the doctor was just so overwhelmed at the end of the day. Like, how do I present myself with high energy all day long? This is exhausting. Amanda looked him square in the face and said, "You don't have to."
Awesome.
Yeah.
Not
I was like,
needs that.
Yes, I forgot I told him that. And again, I love it. And I think he's actually going to listen to this episode. I love you so much, and he is the best. But he is. But yeah, I told him that, and he did get this look of like, oh yeah, that's right. I'm like, you don't always have to be the nice, energetic one. Like, not everybody wants that from you. It's okay. And you learn that with time. You learn that with time.
I just want you to be real.
Yeah.
All right. And then the last question, Jen, what do you wish you would have learned in school that took you years to learn in practice?
You know, I actually think what Peter just said is, I think as dental professionals, you know, we are so good with the minutia, these small teeth and small instruments and, you know, hand pieces and all of that. And so it's really hard, or it's really easy, I should say, to be hard on yourself as well. And, you know, if somebody says something that, it you know, kind of grates you on the back of your head, and, you know, that one patient can kind of take the rest of your day down, it takes several years, at least it did for me, where I felt like, okay, you know what, you can't control everything. And some people aren't going to be happy, and it's okay.
Mm-hmm. I think maybe in the hygiene equivalent of that is, you know, I'm not going to get every piece of tartar off today, and it's going to be okay. I will sleep tonight, and the world will still revolve. Like, it's fine.
It's
so.
Just be your best.
You guys have been so wonderful. You're the first duo together that we've interviewed, and non-hygiene, I think, right, Joffrey?
Yes. So thank you so much for joining us.
Yes.
Honored.
Yes,
this is exactly where we want to take the podcast, is talking to just amazing dental professionals, and also with products that, like Amanda and I, can really get behind. And